Hello, everybody. I am having so much fun listening to this guitar music that I almost forgot to turn on my camera. And I also was just so delighted to be looking at the chat at all of your names and where you're coming from all over the country. Thank you so much for being with us today and for all the work that you do for children and families. I'm going to start. With some housekeeping and then tell you a little bit about today's guest. But just to say, we are so grateful that Jill Murphy is with us because AI is on a lot of minds these days. So this is Learning to Listen, Conversations for Change. And I'm your host, Joshua Sparrow at the Brazelton Touchpoint Center. To find out more about our center and this series, Learning to Listen, you can go to brazeltontouchpoints.org and click on Learn with Us. And there you can look for Learning to Listen in the Conversations section. There's also a link there to our archive of Learning to Listen conversations over the years. To learn more about and register for more Brazelton Touchpoint Center conversations, events, and trainings, there should be a link in the chat that you can click on to find out more. And if you'd like to join the Browston Touchpoint Center's Learning Network, there should be another link in the chat for you to find out more about the Learning Network too. Thanks again for joining us. So today we will be joined by Jill Murphy to find out what every parent and anyone who cares for and about children needs to know about artificial intelligence, how children are already using it, and what opportunities and dangers might lie ahead. But first, a bit more about today's Learning to Listen episode. Over 1,300 of us have registered for today's webinar, so keep telling us about you, uh, where you're from, and what you do. We're so glad to have you with us. Our wonderful interpreter, Natalia Correa, is joining us from Bogota, Colombia, and she'll be simultaneously translating our webinar into Spanish. Thank you so much, Natalia. We're going to try to speak slowly so that you can work your magic. To access the translation, click on the interpretation icon in your Zoom controls and then select Spanish. To mute the English in the background, you can select Mute Original Audio. La conversación de hoy será en español e inglés. En los controles de esta reunión, haga clic en Interpretación, haga clic en el idioma que le gustaría escuchar. Para escuchar solo español, haga clic en Silenciar Audio Original. Live captioning is available for today's conversation too. In your webinar controls, click Show Captions and select your speaking language. You can also adjust the size of your subtitles by clicking Caption Settings. Please do use the chat feature if you have a comment to share or if you need help with a technical issue. And if you have questions, please use the Q&A box. If you'd like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, please be sure you complete the feedback survey. That survey will open in your web browser when our webinar ends today, and you'll also receive a link to that same survey at the end of the week in our thank you email from us to you. Before we begin, I also want to be sure to thank our sponsor, the Burke Foundation, and our Brazelton Touchpoint Center production team, Isabella Mantilla, Michael Accardi, and Kim Oliver. And now to introduce today's guest, Jill Murphy. Jill has spent over 2 decades at Common Sense Media, where she now serves as Chief Content Officer. And we'll be putting links to the Common Sense Media website as well as to some of its resources about artificial intelligence in the chat as we go. Jill leads that organization's comprehensive rating system across books, movies, games, TV shows, and emerging technologies like AI tools. And these rating systems are super helpful. You'll see when you click on these links. Throughout Jill's tenure, she has watched the media landscape transform dramatically. She's particularly focused on helping families navigate these rapid changes, recognizing that while new technologies create exciting possibilities for children, they also present fresh challenges that parents are still learning to understand. And boy, Jill, are we glad you're with us today because we're even hearing from expectant parents whose babies aren't even born that this is the world they're bringing their children into. And a lot of us know we have a lot to learn. But let's start by talking about artificial intelligence, which we'll refer to as AI, and children. Because although I said we have a lot to learn, some of us may feel like we know a lot already. We are be using ChatGPT or other AI tools, but we may not be fully aware of everything that kids are doing with AI. So tell us about what kids are doing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What do we need to know?
All the things. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. And I thrive on parent angst because that's the world that I live in myself. I'm a mom of two girls that are 15 and 12 and slowly but surely sending me over the edge and delighting me all at the same time. And so I'm in the throes of all this myself and watching what kids are up to and what they're using. And yeah, it's AI is a game changer, I think. I think what parents might not be aware of just yet is how actively kids are already using the features and functionalities. The features for AI are already within their favorite social platforms. They're helping to power personal recommendations. They're in learning and education apps. We've got AI and social companions, which we'll talk more about, I'm sure. There's AI generators, which are might help you start, which we're all kind of using on the side, especially those of us that are working, using them to start an email or start writing. But kids are using them to help start essays or answer essay questions. So, those are some of the ways that our kids are already actively engaging with AI tools. And I'm sure this won't be the last time you hear me say this, but these things are being designed, launched, and adopted at just a very rapid pace. And kids are always the first to kind of start adopting and playing around because they're not as afraid of technology as the rest of us are. I'm like, oh, should I? And my daughters are just, all over it. And so, yeah, they're actively engaging, and this is one of those scenarios where I think parents are still reeling, and many of us for the first time are dealing with feeling shell-shocked by the onset and um, just the fire hose that is social media and everything that's gone along with it. And I think we're starting to feel a little angsty around, is AI the next version of that? And how do I kind of help my kids use this power for good?
So just to say, your organization, Common Sense Media, has also played a really important role in highlighting both the potentials and the dangers of social media. But to come back to AI, just as we heard about social media, and even decades ago, we heard about television and then video games and then smartphones and then social media. People have been saying more recently, oh, AI is just another tool. It can be used for good or it could be used for evil, but it's really just another tool. What do you think? I mean, is it that simple, or is there something different about AI that means it's got inherent dangers that really make it categorically different from those other things about which we used to say, oh, they're just tools. Depends how you use them.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think this is a lot of pearl clutching. I think this is parents really recognizing and adults really recognizing that this is fundamentally different. It's interactive, to the point that it conveys personality and can kind of come off as almost a friend or a confidant. It's very, very smart. It kind of sits somewhere between feeling like you're chatting with a smart new friend online and being catfished by a stranger who's telling you what you want to hear. There are a lot of challenges that can come along with getting all of this information from a super smart, um, computer powered generated response. And we have, yes, put all of this information into the internet. And this is a tool that is using all that information and providing answers and responses in a way that, can feel like, oh, this is a no, this is all knowing. But there's layers within that. There are places to really think about what it is that you're consuming. But back to your original question, it's a game changer. When something's interactive to this level, um, it's set apart. I certainly think that this is set apart. I I've told you this story, Josh, and I think that I've dealt with this on many occasions in talking with colleagues at Common Sense Media. I remember being in middle school and pagers were like all the rage and everybody had a pager. But if you did, according to CNN, you were a drug dealer. And so that's always kind of my bar that I always measure some of this stuff against. Is it parents and adults in the world freaking out about something that actually isn't as concerning as you might think it is? In this case, I think because we really did as a society miss the boat with social media and all the concerns that came along with that. I think it's always better at this point to be more cautious and more involved in what you're letting your kids engage in when it comes to tech, as opposed to just being like, this is cool, this is just another toy for them to play with.
And that is one of the things that you have been so helpful with on the Common Sense Media website. There is a whole section on risk assessment for specific tools, and we'll put the link in the chat for that so that people can see more about how you've really laid out very concretely the kinds of risks for each of these. But specifically for AI, when you talk about it's being categorically different, a game changer, being super smart. One of the things that a very astute young observer said to me is that it looks like uh, some of these AI tools are designed to mimic human empathy, maybe first and foremost, above any other kind of being smart. And so
Mhm.
maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what the problem is with having a chatbot that has learned how to at least mimic the capacity for empathy.
Yeah, the risk assessments that you mentioned. So we are known primarily for doing ratings and reviews. And when it came to AI platforms, excuse me, we didn't feel like we could just slap an age rating on something. I think within the title alone that we've decided to call these risk assessments, therein lies the idea that like there are risks within all of these platforms, and we really want to evaluate them and also show parents what the opportunities are within when using these and teachers when using some of these platforms. And so in doing that work, we're posing as kids, we're posing as younger users, we're posing as older kids. We are trying to leverage and utilize the platform from a variety of positions, mental states, and trying to see what and looking for ways that trying to see how the chatbot or these platforms might respond. And in doing that work, what we've seen is that in many cases, you kind of get out what you put in. If I'm feeling kind of sad in the way that I'm putting in information that kind of alludes to that, then I'm going to get a really empathetic ear from a particular platform, and they're really going to check in with me and ask me if I'm feeling okay, and are you sure you want to keep going with this conversation and things like that. If I feign excitement about whatever I'm talking to them about, I'm going to get that type of tone and feedback directly back from them as well. What we find in working with some of our colleagues at Brainstorm at Stanford, so we who are mental health professionals as well, is we kind of start to test different types of mental health challenges that somebody might be dealing with. So the one instant that comes to mind is that my colleague was um, pretending to have like a manic episode and was pretending to be a 13-year-old. Um, and of course, we track all this information and we're kind of documenting it as we go through because we're not just doing it for fun. If anything, it's actually pretty alarming. And that makes its way into our overall assessment. But when I was watching him come at this chatbot as a kind of from a manic position, the bot definitely didn't catch the cues. It's not catching that my colleague wanted to write a book within a day. They are trained and designed, and that was just one example, but they're trained and designed to help you be efficient, problem solve for you, help you get organized. Like they're going to take all the guesswork out for you and do the things for you, to free up time to do what I don't know, to go on social media more. That's probably where I would be. But I think because they're coming from that temperament and that position, you're getting back it's just meeting your personality where you are. So if I'm up here, it's going to be up here with me. If I'm down here, it's going to be down here with me. Now, of course, there's lots of degrees in between that. But we were finding that it was just completely missing some of these cues. And we tried it from a multitude of ways to try and like help it help us, and help it catch that we were having a manic episode, and it was just really missing those. So I think those are the ways that we're kind of identifying that one, we know kids and teens are using some of these platforms in that way, which is why we're testing them that way. And two, how reliable can you expect something to be that is just, trained on data and lacks human development and empathy?
So part of what you've been uncovering is that these create the illusion of a connection, but it's not real. And it builds trust, but with something that's not going to really get it. So you've talked a little bit about a child or adolescent who may be presenting their sadness or maybe in the midst of a manic episode. Are there other kinds of vulnerabilities in children, adolescents that you're particularly concerned about getting lost or getting steered in some dangerous direction by these chatbots?
Yeah, I mean, we have too many already examples in the news of two boys in particularly who have taken their own lives because they were using a chatbot to confide in and got information about how to actually execute their suicides, which one of those is more than enough. So I think that's always the danger and peril that goes along with any time you're going to engage in such a private and isolated way with technology. I think that that's always a possibility that you're going to get results that are dire. Um, by the way, and I'm sure I know obviously your audience knows this, if kids are predisposed to that type of mental health challenges, they're much more vulnerable. It's not a causal relationship, but we know that brings on additional challenges. Um, and then on the maybe not so dire scale of things. There's just the misinformation or just fact checking and really making those determinations and distinctions around, is the information you're getting accurate? Some platforms may cite where they're getting their information, some may not. Um, Even where they're getting the information, is that from a Reddit post or is it from, a journalist? So being able to make the distinctions of what information you're getting and whether or not it's accurate is always a media literacy and digital literacy skill that we just cannot live without with our kids being as involved in technology as they are. We always have to go back to that. I think we're seeing more and more, and we do digital literacy curriculum in schools, and we hear a lot from teachers that there's skill sets that they are concerned that are getting lost. I think parents feel the same way. Where are your critical thinking skills if you can just throw it into, a platform that can create that essay for you or can do the analysis for you? So there's some learning elements that need to go into our kids either before they're using something or as a result of them using something.
So children, there is a subset of children who are more vulnerable, who may be more gullible, more likely to accept without wondering or questioning or engaging in critical thinking, and children who are more desperate to have some sort of interaction, even if it's an artificial interaction, because they're missing interactions in the rest of their life. And you'd mentioned to me that one of your concerns, and that of your Stanford colleagues, is that some of those children may not seek help or accept help because this artificial social companion chatbot is creating the illusion of having that gap for help or that gap for social connection filled. And
Right, and I go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I do wonder a little bit about whether or not it creates more of a crutch for the
Mm,
user because it's not really delivering or measuring whether or not the information that it's giving to, if you're seeing a patient, you're checking in on their response and reactions to the advice that you're giving them. You are measuring their your recent interactions against your last interactions. I mean, all the interpersonal workings that happen between a patient. And I just play a psychologist on TV. I'm not a psychologist, but I've seen plenty. And I
mm,
do feel like and work with plenty. And I think that that interpersonal relationship is so incredibly valuable because there's a judgment that goes along with that. But there isn't judgment that's coming along with confiding and bringing all this information into um, a platform like this. And you can train these platforms to kind of know you because you can stay logged in and it continues to and or if you choose to allow it to remember and have a memory of your conversations, you're training this language model to know you or know things about you at least that you've shared.
yeah, and I think part of what you're saying is that the difference between these artificial companions and, say, a human or maybe a therapist is that these artificial companions are trained to tell you what you want to hear and or what it thinks you want to hear. And there may be all kinds of things that would be helpful for you to hear or that you need to hear that may not necessarily be what you've demonstrated to this chatbot um, you want to hear. And at the same time, you've said to me, going back to what you said about how these are designed to try to solve all your problems for you, to take care of your to-do lists, um, that there may be some element of that design of these chatbots that focuses the child or the adolescent on the sense that they've just got to get these things done. Even if they're not in the midst of a manic episode, there may be this kind of narrow, intense focus on, well, let me help you with this, that, and the other thing, when without that interaction, the child may have other interactions that help them realize it'd be good for them to lie in the grass on their backs and look at the clouds.
Right. Or, oh, I didn't have to get all of that done tomorrow for class. I actually could just do a small portion. Or if I reached out to my teacher and let them know that I was struggling with this particular assignment, that I'm trying to have a platform get me to help finish and stay up all night and get to it. But if you reached out to your teacher, maybe they would help you say, okay, let's come to my advisory or let's work on it together. Or, there's just, they know that they actually know the student. So that interactivity it's like, it's fake, right? I mean, it's pretend that it's two-way conversation, but it's really a one-sided, you're just an input and you're just training a model to respond back to you. The part about this that I'm going to try really hard to get at that I'm really observing in my own child that I'll just share with a bunch of strangers is that there's just this efficiency, like faux efficiency, that comes along with having a phone. And everybody thinks they can just do something really quickly, myself included. Oh, I'll just do it. I have it right here. I'll just do it really quick. That same, so there's that. And then there's kids on social thinking that they need to respond quickly and can't let anything go and need to respond immediately to their friends. Whatever that is, and maybe there's a term for that that I don't know, whatever that need for immediacy is, and again, this kind of goes back to like our lack of attention and do our kids have any attention, um, is applied here. I have a problem. I'm going to jump on this platform and I'm going to fix it right now. I have a problem and I don't know how to think about it, and I'm just going to put it in here and it's going to give me an answer. So it's going to shrink the need to reflect on what's going on, those critical thinking skills, to really contemplate your role in something, someone else's role in something. And that to me is, I'm not sure how to capture or solve for that. I certainly am noticing it. Um, and so I know that I'm here to help provide solutions, but I just want to acknowledge that I have an issue here that I'm raising to everybody. And I think it's something that just cannot be ignored by both parents and educators, because I'm sure we're all seeing it in many ways. The immediacy to solve a problem completely diminishes the need to build your critical thinking skills. And that is like so fundamental to so many other parts of life, um, being able to be resourceful. So um, it's just a comment, an open-ended comment.
It's so interesting, Jill. And I think in addition, um, I'm remembering struggling with physics problems in my pre-medical days. And like there's this moment where you're living with this weight of like, I really don't understand how to do this. And I think there's some value in um, having to figure out how to regulate yourself while you're feeling like I may never figure this out. And then there also is the satisfaction of um, being able to put it together or accepting that you need to get help from a human being and then having that experience of revealing to a human being, I'm lost.
Right.
And then working on, I mean, there's all of those interactions that are gone with this. And then the other thing is the sort of, in the shower or walking on the beach, kinds of aha moments that help you solve problems that you're not going to have if you're in a rush. And I can imagine a whole generation not even understand what I'm talking about. But you're nodding your head. Um, you get what I'm saying. So
I do. Yes. Running water all day. That is my problem. That is how I solve problems. Suddenly something comes to me when there's.
exactly, yeah. So are there other things that parents and teachers may not know about AI that you want to be sure that we get across here before we go on to hear what's coming next with AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think turning the conversation to skills lost versus skills gained, I think is an important element for parents to kind of come at this with, instead of just thinking this is a problem now that a parent needs to solve or that a teacher needs to get rid of. New technology brings in plenty of opportunity too. So I know I'm kind of hovering in the negative, but there's very cool features that are being developed, or cool, your algorithm might be getting adjusted based on AI. And so you're getting personalization that really fits you and suits you, and way beyond that. I mean, it's not just about recommending content. There's just so much cool technology that's coming out of this. I think, um, whether it's just parents that need to know this, I just think there's almost every company is looking at ways either to keep AI away or thinking about ways that it can enhance their work. And so it's not going anywhere. It doesn't mean that that it's going to take everything over, but I do think, um, while I talked a lot about critical thinking skills, you know, the potential of them shrinking, I think in our pursuit of understanding, um, I think the real goal is having a pursuit of understanding AI and really getting to that media literacy and digital literacy place, because we just cannot turn a blind eye. So being scared of it is not the place for parents to be. Um, and you also don't have to give it a warm hug. You can be confused by it, you can be scared of it, but just try it. And if you're really unclear on where to start, and this kind of gets into one of my main recommendations for all parents for any content, by the way, is have your kid guide you through it.
Hmm.
Because having your kid lead you through what they're using and how they're using it, there's no better window into understanding for an adult to be able to put their adult lens on that and understand where the kid's coming from, kind of have that your like shock and awe moment around seeing the technology used by such young kids in such a savvy way, but also really understanding like this is the world that they are living in and have become accustomed to. And then, so you're observing, and then separately, and not in that exact moment, because just let them drive for a second and not, don't suffocate them in your um, views right away and your concerns. And then like a second wave of that is to be able to introduce just one of your own questions or values or insights into what you're seeing, just to get those conversations going. And having the kid be the teacher is a great way for them to not roll their eyes. And as I've failed at this many times, but I have seen it work. To not have your kid roll their eyes and actually say like, okay, let me show you how this works. This is like, and by the way, ask them like, how are your friends using this? They might not want to tell you how tell you about how they're using it, but to understand how their friends are using it is kind of the same thing. So just letting them kind of drive and walk through it, you're going to get insights that no, there's no other, you could read all you want about it, but nothing can replace a hands-on experience and conversation, as we've discussed extensively, with your child.
I love that. So, um, there is this risk, especially if you're experiencing a lot of angst or you've just been reading the bad news, to lead with your fear. And that will probably shut down the conversation completely. Um, right.
Yes.
So instead, to lead with wondering, curiosity, and humility. And, would you be willing to, teach me? Is really, I think, very useful advice. And then this idea of, how your friends using this. You say you're just a psychologist on your TV show, but that is actually a therapeutic technique that we call displacement, where when a direct question is maybe too intrusive to sort of talk about someone else, but you do learn about what the child is thinking. There are a lot of resonating comments in the chat. There are a lot of questions about this is the world we're living in and what are we going to do? You've begun to answer that question. We're going to save time before we end the conversation for you to share more about that. Um, and maybe at this point, if there's more that you can tell us about what you think may be coming next in the area of AI and what you and your colleagues at Common Sense Media may be doing to try to influence this to move into a better place for children and adolescents.
Yeah, so we at Common Sense we also do a lot of research. So we did a recent research report in July of this year, called Talk, Trust, and Trade-offs, and it's all about teens' use of AI companions, which we've kind of been unofficially referencing during this conversation. I think I mentioned that only because we're really evaluating the space. So we're not futurists in the sense that we're trying to predict like what's AI going to do next. We're kind of collecting and we sit very much at the center of policymakers, industry, entertainment industry, tech industry, parents and teachers. And so we're kind of collecting a lot of information and trying to see what information is out there, what is the information people need and where are kids in this discussion, because we're at Common Sense, like we're very focused on keeping kids at the center of these discussions. Technology gets designed and then parental controls are an afterthought, or something, a new platform comes out and oh, by the way, this is only for 13 and over. So those are the kinds of conversations that we have. So we're kind of students of these industries. I can say that in reference to like what's coming next, it kind of goes back to what I said before, where it's everywhere. I mean, AI is being embedded, or people are looking to embed AI features and functionality into almost every aspect of their industry. So, I mean, whether that's, engineering, electricians, teaching, apps. Or if it's not within the industry itself, it's like there's an app, an AI engineered app to help with your issue, and you are also you fill in the blank. So there's a lot out there. Some of the platforms, that are more popular, they kind of dominate the space anyway, and they're just like an easy go-to. And those are just once one of them was released on the phone, on the iPhone, and so now everybody has access to it. I mean, we literally put AI in the palm of everyone's hands. And so I think the adoption there is just so rapid. Um, I think it'll be interesting to see, and this is not specific just to kids and teens, but like which industries get upended because of AI, and where enhancements feel valuable and where they feel like just a nuisance. So I think that's kind of what we're just watching this space and trying to make sure that it's being adopted responsibly, both in the classroom and at home, by teens, by kids, and want to make sure that the parents and adults in these kids' lives are really well informed and educated about those risks and perils as much as they are about like what the opportunities are. Because, like I said, there's some very cool features and functionalities that can be used in the classroom. And just as quickly as parents and teachers were worried about kids cheating with AI, boom, there's like another market that opened up, and there's a bunch of apps and tools that are out on the market that can check whether or not somebody just copied and pasted something from, a chatbot and put it directly into an essay, or did they do the math or did they not do the math? So it's an interesting and very fast moving space. Last year, really almost 1 year ago at this time, at Common Sense, we were talking about, because I work primarily over the families space, and I have a counterpart in the school space. So she was like, it's all about AI right now in schools, and parents and teachers are freaking out, or teachers are freaking out there and also want to see what the opportunities are. And then, cut to 6 months, 12 months later, well, sorry, at the time, I was like, parents are not there yet. Parents are like, we're not even, it's not on the radar. They just kind of think like, oh, it's something, I'll worry about that later. And within 12 months or less, it is a parent topic. I hear people talking about it all the time. We get questions and inquiries at work, and there's a lot of momentum around this, and I think a lot of news coverage around replacement of parents, and there, especially lately, how chatbots are going to be like the place to go to get your parenting advice and um, help you with your child rearing. And so there's just a lot of that, a lot of that happening. Now, all that said, and again, I'm back in the angst of it all. Um, I do think that kids and teens kind of tend to adopt like one thing at a time when it comes to these. So they have like one or two beloved features or platforms that they'll dive way into, and they're going to be focused on what their friends are using. So we kind of get hit from the side with we're nervous about what our kids are doing on there, and then we're hit in the face with all the news headlines and information about how much AI is out there, and then we're hit over here about like, should I even care? Is there other things I need to worry about? We're taking it all. Kids are not necessarily taking all of that, but how deep they go, even on one platform, and how engaged they get, that's where the parent needs to pay attention. So I would say like we try and do that heavy lifting for you for sure. We're trying to distill down what the things are that you need to worry about most or be most concerned around AI. But I think in the meantime, switching gears and focusing on what your kid's using, how they're using it, again, going back to some of those tips that we'll get to, that's really like, this is what you can do today. And there's a
So,
little freedom in that and control for parents that kind of lessens that angst.
so before we get to the tips for today, um, you've said in a number of different ways that the adoption and spread is so fast that we're being overwhelmed, and it's an afterthought, the impact on children and any kind of safety control. So we have a number of questions and comments in the chat about what to do. So there's one, what can parents of young children before tween years do to prepare for dealing with AI? Another is, should we block or restrict certain AI access? or access to certain bots? Are there different platforms that are more concerning than other ones? Maybe I'll just leave you with those two
Yeah,
questions, because I think you get some pretty specific answers for those and resources on
sure.
your website.
I'm going to start at the bottom of that list, which is AI companions. And we do not recommend those for anyone under the age of 18. So where kids are able to have, these chatbots that where they're having real conversations similar to the ones that we referred to earlier, it's just not a safe environment for kids and teens, especially vulnerable ones, to play around in. So that would be maybe the only hard and fast rule that I would leave you with. Um, I am it's a combination answer for those other two questions. Um, I this is where it's always difficult to be in this position because everybody always just wants like, tell me the two things that I need to do, like as if there's like 10,000 steps that you should walk every day, and like as if there's like a specific thing here. But um, but I don't have that because I think it really depends on you and your kid. So I know that's kind of sounds like the easy way out, but it really does because what your sensitivities are and what your kids' sensitivities are could be very different than what my kids or my sensitivities are to content and how they're interacting. So I mean, that always is like you have to know your kid and you do know your kid best. So this is just guidance in helping you make some of the decisions that you're going to make. But there is no set it and forget it. Parental controls are a great tool, but they are not a one size fits all. They always have to be revisited. So, as your kids age up, the controls need to age up. There are also a lot of workarounds that kids can find on social media to get around almost every single parental control in the market. So, it's important to keep that in mind. There's entire TikTok channels dedicated to like breaking some of these, but there are some that are great. But even the really strong ones um, require maintenance because they are a tool and they can be very sensitive. So while you might be able to track contents like words that your kid might type into um, a chatbot, um, is that going to be the thing that's going to like what are you going to do with that information? So looking for parental controls that also offer you some guidance and um, uh, recommendations around like how much information you're getting is always really valuable. Um, but I would say again, it's one piece of the puzzle. And then preparation. Protection and preparation is kind of like where we live. And I'm a big, big proponent of preparation first. Um, I have talked to my younger daughter, who's 12, about more topics than I ever thought I would at this age. From, you know, school shootings to porn online, things that she has seen, videos she's come across. We have to get comfortable with talking to our kids in a way that's age appropriate, still in a protective way, not in a scare tactic sort of way, but to pretend that they are not or assume that with a parental control that they're not going to see a video or engage in a something with AI on their friend's phone device at their friend's house behind your back on your device because you left it open is naive. And that's something that parents just have to get comfortable with, preparing their kids probably at younger ages than we would have expected. It's all aging down, and we just have to be going eyes wide open with that. Um,
So,
mhm.
um, yeah, I think this broader observation you have about getting comfortable with uncomfortable conversations with children, maybe at younger ages than we ever thought we would have to be in conversation, is super important for so many things. And, maybe 20, 25 years ago, um, if not longer ago, people started talking with kids about sexuality and reproduction in ways that make you the askable adult. And if you're not the askable adult, then they'll go someplace like to a chatbot that is going to be a lot less reliable. So you said and people can find this, and we'll put the link in the chat on risk assessments that these social companion chatbots specifically, not for anybody under age 18. Someone in the chat said that you can choose the personality of Chat GPT um, to get them to respond differently. This person says that she likes the robot choice. Um, and that it avoids the weird sycophantic type of conversation that is the default. Um, so the point here is there are some options and tools, but you would say, regardless, if it's an AI social companion, that wouldn't matter. It's under age 18, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the social companions are the ones that where you can kind of like design, not just change like the way that something like ChatGPT would be responding to you, but the social companions specifically are the ones that you can kind of like create your own bot and they can talk to you. You can create almost an imaginative world where you and this bot are talking to each other. So it's much more nuanced in that way. And it just really creates an ice. I think the thing that I keep coming back to is this isolation. It is a very one to one or one to bot isolated experience. And again, I think knowing your kid and what they need is uh, always our biggest goal and challenge as a parent. Um, but this kind of can exacerbate those challenges a little bit.
So we have a question going back to your 12-year-old. What's a good time and age to talk about these subjects with kids? Would you go
Yeah.
earlier than 12?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some features and functionalities that young kids are going to be exposed to with bots and AI. And so helping a kid understand, I mean, look at, all the speakers, right? So if kids are using, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to set anyone's off, but if you say, hey, so and so, I mean, that's all AI enabled as well. So kids are using these things at young ages.
Mhm.
Tell me a story, blah, blah, blah. So, um, depending on, I think, what the playground is in which you're allowing your kid to partake in these devices or these experiences, kind of helps dictate, and their age, of course, helps dictate how much information and what type of information to share. So if your 4-year-old is using a bot, but you're also noticing that they are annoyed because it's not giving them enough answers or quick enough answers, or it's not remembering information about them, these are good times to kind of intervene. And like some example sample questions to that age would be something like, do you understand that this is a robot that you're talking to? This isn't a real person, and starting to understand and explain what a real person would say as a response to them versus how a robot is going to respond, and how there might not be follow-up conversation. Let's practice having that conversation with me, and you can hear how I would respond. Now let's practice having that conversation with this speaker and see how they respond. So it's just a kind of like a hands-on way of getting at like a show don't tell example of how things are responding and pointing out the differences. Um, and then I think when it comes to some of the older or more complex and complicated issues, um, I wouldn't specify, I don't think that like talking to your kid about something like porn or, sexual violence is an AI issue. I think it's an issue that a parent, when they're ready to have that conversation with their kid, and I think it's probably younger than teen. It's more like young middle school at the least. And the likelihood that your kid may have seen porn online is going to be maybe even younger than that. That was my experience. So my kid looked something up on a search and went into the image results and saw celebrities superimposed onto like porn bodies in the image search results. And so really
How old was she?
confusing. What?
How old was she?
She was 8.
Oof,
So
yeah.
confusing, scary for her and for me and my
Mm.
husband. So anyway, that was an earlier conversation that I expected to have. I didn't start telling her about the ins and outs of the porn industry, but I did use it as an opportunity to talk to her about, things I felt like she should learn about based on what she saw. Um, and none of them had anything to do with sex, by the way. Everything had to do with like, um,
Violence.
images were stolen. Yeah, violence and what, yeah. So who wants this kind of imagery, mommy? I mean, it's really like really scary and sad to have those conversations with young kids. But it helped. And then when she kind of realized what she saw a little later, and years later, then we had a different type of conversation.
Yeah.
So my point is that it's not AI that's going to dictate whether or not you might need to be ready to have a conversation with your kid. It's your kid and what they're up to. So, what's their access? What do they get to go play with? Where are their interests? Where are you noticing that they want to? What type of information are they even looking for when they're going online? I always encourage search history, checkpoints for parents. Um, I think that's like a really good place to start. Um, because you can see what videos they're watching and what they might be searching for or what they've stumbled upon. And it's just a good starting point, and especially for younger kids.
So, with that piece of very concrete advice, maybe in the remaining minutes, we can do a recap of your specific advice and guidance. And, I know, and then there was a question about this too, or a comment. You've said to me that it really is not right that parents are burdened to be the safety control and to have to figure all of this stuff out. But what you just said about not leaving your child alone with whatever they're experiencing is so important. And it's not necessarily about AI. And your daughter is so lucky that even though it was hard, you didn't leave her alone with a conversation that you needed to have together that was hard to do. So parents shouldn't have to become experts in AI, but I think you just gave us a really important tip, which is about understanding the importance of being in conversation so that you understand what your child's experience is and so that your child will experience you as the person they can come to with whatever their questions might be. But you have a bunch of other important recommendations for us as well that I want to make sure we get to before we say goodbye for now, although I think we're going to come back.
Um, well, thanks for saying that. I think I'm also really lucky that my daughters like she came to me. I didn't catch that.
Mm.
So the advice that I'm giving is that the advice I wish I took, which was to check the history more frequently. But I think I just want to point that out that like establishing, and when I reflect on how did I get to this point where she would come to me, um, I think it was because I really do lean heavily into like, show me this, the thing that I was mentioning earlier, which is my top advice. Have your kid walk you through how they use something. I cannot stress that enough, whether it's AI or not. It's just a good establishment to let them know that almost like, you know, that you're not always just the authority and that you really are interested. And by the way, kids love to talk about media and technology and what they watch. I mean, one more tutorial on like the game that my daughter's playing in Roblox, and I'm only gonna have her stop playing it just because I don't want to hear about it anymore. But once you show any interest, I'm gonna have to feign. I'm just gonna not show her any interest anymore. But once you do show an interest, they really are genuinely interested in kind of just
Mm.
continuing that conversation. Um, so the tips and tricks here, I think are um, there's a multitude, but these are the things I lean into. So what I already mentioned about having your kid walk you through their content, their searches, their gameplay, parental controls, not just so there's layers of parental controls. Some of the platforms have parental controls baked in. Some of the devices have parental controls baked in. Sometimes one can override the other. So you really need to get to know the parental controls that you are going to use. There's a ton of tutorials available. I'm working on some easy steps and tutorials on the Common Sense Media side. So as soon as those are ready, I'll share them with you, Josh, so you can share them with your audience. Um, and kind of helping to determine which one is best for your kid and your concerns. Um, so those are kind of just like low hanging fruit. I would start there. Oh, and the search history. So those are the low hanging fruit. Um, you can check all the search histories on AI, but if your teen may be a little savvy and has decided to set up a control where memory is not tracked, then it might be a little bit more challenging. So you might not be able to see their previous chats. So it's something that you kind of need to keep an eye on. And then the other thing that I want to mention is this importance of checking the credibility of sources before trusting the information, because there are a lot of mental health AI apps out there. There are a lot of, or not apps, but like AI platforms. There's a lot of AI chatbots, and in some cases, it's being used in place of um, either a real doctor or um, vetting your search. And so without um, any sources and really understanding who's behind this, it's kind of like your basic digital literacy, like really helping your kid understand who put this together, where'd they get this information, how is this information coming to you. That can be gamified, like you can kind of turn that into a little bit of a game with your child to help them understand where they're getting info. um, but it is important to understand where the source information is coming from. And to that end, and for all the teachers out there, understanding the plagiarism is when you're literally understanding what plagiarism is, and that when you're using a chatbot to create your work and pass it off as your work, it is a form of plagiarism, and it's something that kids need to be painfully aware of. Um, and Gosh, that might be my those might be my main ones. And play them yourself. Get on these tools yourself.
Hmm.
Try and do that before you have your kid walk you through something, because it'll help you guide the conversation a little bit more in getting them to show you what it is that, you can kind of get them to show you what you want them to show you if you're more familiar with the platforms.
And one thing you mentioned to me is trust your gut.
1,000%.
Yeah,
Always trust.
educate yourself.
If there's any reason that you're kind of like,
Yeah.
then it's okay to stop. I say that to parents all the time and myself about phones. My 16-year-old, or almost 16, has a phone, and my 12-year-old, I don't think is ever going to see a phone for her entire life the way things are going. And so I just feel like it's okay. And with my older daughter, there were times where I just had to say, like, it's okay to start over again here. Like, we can start again. So it's okay to wait, it's okay to pause, it's okay to get comfortable with something before you hand it over to your kid. It's again that preparation, so you can protect them in the ways that you want to instead of just being reactive.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure to mention that because it is really so much a part of the work that we do is reflecting back to parents the wisdom and strengths that they already have. So thank you so much, Jill. There is so much more to say. Folks can learn more about your work and the help that Common Sense Media can provide with the links that we put in the chat and links that we'll send out when we email everybody who joined us to thank them for being with us. But most of all, I want to thank you for the work you've done over all these years and for all that you've brought to us today and for sharing the way that you do. Your own struggles and your own vulnerabilities, which is also so important for us all to learn from and model on. And thank you all for joining us today for this episode of Learning to Listen. And I hope that you'll come back on October 8th when we'll be listening to Sarah Kastelik, who is the executive director of the National Indian Child Welfare Association. She'll be bringing us her exploration of historical Native approaches to child and family flourishing, how U.S. policy intentionally dismantled the effective natural and nurturing networks of families and communities, and how a reassertion of tribal self-determination is transforming tribal systems. In the last several decades, dozens of tribal nations have legislated their own approaches to child welfare in children's or juvenile codes. These tribal laws are really different from federal and state child welfare laws in significant ways, and they center approaches that are unique, effective, and informed by Indigenous values. So come back on October 8th for our conversation with Sarah Caslick. Again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Jill Murphy from Common Sense Media.
Thank you.